My roommate secretly recorded me having panic attacks and posted them on TikTok for mental health awareness. She made $12,000 while I didn't even know I was viral. When I found out, I didn't confront her. I did something better. A week later, she'd lose everything. But to understand why I went nuclear, you need to know how we got here. Jessa moved in 6 months ago when my previous roommate graduated and left me scrambling to cover rent on our 2-bedroom apartment near campus. She seemed perfect on paper, psychology major, clean, quiet, said she was passionate about mental health advocacy. She had great references and paid her security deposit immediately. Red flag number 1, when someone seems too good to be true, they usually are. I have panic disorder. I was diagnosed 3 years ago after what my therapist calls a perfect storm of stress, genetics, and a traumatic car accident that left me with PTSD. Most days I manage it well with therapy and medication, but sometimes, especially during finals or when something triggers a memory, I have episodes. They're not pretty: hyperventilation, crying, shaking. Sometimes I can't catch my breath for what feels like forever. Jessa knew about my condition from the beginning. I told her during our roommate interview because I didn't want to hide it. I have panic disorder, I'd explained. Sometimes I have attacks. They can be loud and scary, but they pass. I just need space and quiet when they happen. She'd nodded sympathetically, said her grandmother had anxiety too, that she completely understood. What a lie that turned out to be. The first few months of living together were smooth. Jessa was considerate, helped with dishes, kept common areas clean. When I had panic attacks, she'd give me space like I'd asked. Sometimes she'd even leave little notes afterward. Hope you're feeling better. Made you tea, Jay. I thought I'd lucked out with the most understanding roommate ever. I started having more frequent episodes around midterms. School stress combined with a family crisis back home had me barely holding it together. The attacks were coming every few days, sometimes multiple times a day. I felt embarrassed about it, especially because Jessa was always so put together, so calm. I started apologizing constantly. Stop apologizing, she'd say gently. Mental health is health. There's no shame in struggling. She'd started using phrases like that more often, little wellness soundbites that sounded like they came from Instagram posts. I figured it was her psychology training showing. Around that time, she started spending more time on her phone, always filming herself, talking to the camera about self-care routines, study tips, mental health awareness. She told me she was building a social media presence to help with grad school applications. Admissions committees love to see public engagement with psychological concepts, she'd explain. I didn't think much of it. Half the students in our program had some kind of online presence. What I didn't know was that while I was hyperventilating in my bedroom, she was filming through my cracked door. The panic attack that made her famous happened on a Tuesday. I'd gotten a call from my mom about my dad being hospitalized, and the combination of family stress and my fear of hospitals sent me into a spiral. It was bad, one of the worst I'd had in months, hyperventilating so hard I thought I might pass out, crying until my eyes were swollen shut, shaking like I was freezing. Jessa wasn't home when it started, or so I thought. I found out later she'd been in the living room the whole time, phone camera rolling, capturing my breakdown through my bedroom door that I'd left slightly open for air circulation. She filmed for nearly 20 minutes. 20 minutes of my most vulnerable, terrifying moments. She posted it that night with a caption about the reality of panic disorders and how we need to normalize mental health struggles. She included educational text overlays about panic attack symptoms, resources for mental health support, tips for helping someone having an episode. The video looked professional, like a PSA. You could barely see me in the footage, just hear my voice and see shadowy movement, but it was clearly real, clearly devastating. It went viral within 48 hours. I had no idea. I was dealing with my dad's hospitalization, flying home to help my mom, completely offline for almost a week. When I finally returned to campus and opened TikTok, the first thing I saw was my own voice coming from my phone, my panic attack, with 2.3 million views. I sat in stunned silence, watching strangers react to my worst moment. The comments were a mix of support and criticism. This is so brave to share. Poor girl. I hope she gets help. This seems exploitative. Why would someone post this? Panic attacks are no joke. Is this real or staged? Real. It was very, very real. I scrolled through Jess's profile with growing horror. The panic attack video was just the latest in a series of mental health awareness content. She had videos about anxiety, depression, PTSD, eating disorders. Some featured her talking to the camera, but others had audio that sounded suspiciously like private conversations. Phone calls I'd had with my therapist from our living room, me crying to my mom about my struggles, me talking to friends about my medication. She'd been recording me for months. The panic attack video had earned her 50,000 new followers overnight. Her account was suddenly verified. Brands were commenting, offering partnerships. Mental health organizations were sharing her content. She'd become an overnight influencer off the back of my literal breakdown. And she was making money, lots of it. I dug deeper, using skills I'd learned in my data analytics minor. TikTok's creator fund pays based on views and engagement. Sponsored content from therapy apps, meditation companies, wellness brands, affiliate links to anxiety relief products, a Patreon where people paid monthly to support mental health advocacy. Her most recent Instagram post showed a deposit notification, $12,000 from various revenue streams, all generated by content featuring my trauma. I didn't confront her immediately. I needed time to think, to plan. This wasn't just betrayal, it was exploitation, potentially illegal, and definitely actionable. I'm pre-law, planning to specialize in privacy rights after graduation. If Jessa thought she could profit off my medical condition without consequences, she was about to learn otherwise. First, I documented everything, screenshots of every video, every comment, every monetization detail I could find. I created a timeline of when each piece of content was posted versus when the incidents actually occurred. I gathered evidence of her revenue streams, her follower growth, her brand partnerships. I treated it like building a legal case, because that's exactly what I was doing. Next, I researched privacy laws in our state. Recording someone without consent in their private residence is illegal here, especially recording them in a state of medical distress. Using someone's likeness for commercial purposes without permission is a violation of personality rights. Profiting from content featuring someone's mental health crisis without their knowledge or consent could constitute exploitation. I reached out to a lawyer through my university's legal aid clinic. When I explained the situation, her expression went from curious to furious to determined. "This is egregious," she said. "We're going to destroy her." I filed complaints with TikTok, Instagram, and every brand that had partnered with Jessa. I included timestamps, evidence of non-consensual recording, proof that she was monetizing content featuring my medical information without permission. Most platforms have strict policies about this kind of exploitation, especially when mental health is involved. I also filed a police report. In our state, recording someone without consent in a private setting is a misdemeanor. Using that recording for commercial purposes elevates it to a felony. The officer who took my statement looked genuinely disturbed by the evidence I'd compiled. But my masterpiece was the cease and desist letter. We sent it to Jessa, her management company, and every brand she'd partnered with. It outlined her illegal recording practices, her monetization of my medical crises, her violation of my privacy rights, and demanded immediate removal of all content featuring my voice or image. It also demanded financial compensation for the revenue she'd generated using my trauma. I didn't tell her any of this was coming. She had no idea I'd discovered her content, no idea I was building a case. She came home from classes that Thursday acting completely normal, asking how my dad was doing, offering to make dinner. I watched her performance with clinical fascination. She was so good at it. The concerned roommate act, no guilt, no shame, no acknowledgement that she'd been systematically violating my privacy for months. She even mentioned her growing TikTok following over dinner, how she was helping so many people with mental health awareness. "That's wonderful," I said. "I'm sure those people really appreciate your authentic approach." Friday afternoon, everything hit at once. Her TikTok account was suspended pending investigation. Instagram removed multiple posts for policy violations. 3 brand partnerships were terminated immediately. Her management company dropped her. The police showed up at our door with a warrant to search her room and confiscate her recording equipment. She called me frantically while I was in class. "Something's happening," she sobbed. "My accounts are gone. The police were here. Brands are canceling contracts. I don't understand what's going on." "That's terrible," I said calmly. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding." It wasn't a misunderstanding, it was consequences. The full scope of her operation became clear during the police investigation. She hadn't just recorded me, she'd recorded our previous roommate, guests who'd stayed over, phone conversations from people who'd visited our apartment. She had hours of footage of people in vulnerable moments, most of which she hadn't posted yet but was clearly planning to monetize. Her laptop contained folders labeled with names and conditions: my panic attacks, Jordan, relationship breakdown. Alex, family drama. She'd been cataloging human suffering like a content library. The criminal charges came first: unlawful recording, invasion of privacy, exploitation of vulnerable individuals. Then came the civil suit. My lawyer filed on behalf of everyone she'd recorded, seeking damages for emotional distress, privacy violations, and unauthorized commercial use of our likenesses. The settlement was substantial. Jessa had to surrender all revenue generated from content featuring any of us without consent, plus punitive damages. She was also required to issue public apologies, surrender all recordings, and agree to a permanent injunction preventing her from posting any content featuring her victims. She lost everything: her influencer dreams, her brand partnerships, her grad school prospects, her savings. The psychology program expelled her for ethics violations. She had to move back in with her parents and find a new career path, one that hopefully doesn't involve exploiting vulnerable people for profit. The whole experience changed how I think about privacy, consent, and trust. I'd welcomed her into my home, shared my struggles, believed she cared about my well-being. Instead, she'd seen my trauma as content, my breakdowns as business opportunities. But it also showed me something important about myself. I'm not just a victim of panic disorder. I'm someone who fights back, someone who refuses to let exploitation go unpunished, someone who can turn research skills and legal knowledge into weapons when necessary. I still have panic attacks sometimes. The difference is now I know exactly who I can trust when they happen, and more importantly, who I can't. I've learned to be more careful about who I let into my private spaces, more aware of how vulnerability can be weaponized. Jessa moved out the week after the settlement was finalized. She left a note apologizing, claiming she'd never meant to hurt anyone, that she'd just been trying to help raise awareness. Classic perpetrator language. It's never about the money or the fame, always about helping others. My new roommate is a computer science major who spends most of her time gaming with headphones on. She's never once asked about my mental health, never filmed anything, never tried to turn my life into content. It's the most respectful roommate relationship I've ever had. Sometimes people ask if I feel guilty about destroying Jess's career prospects. The answer is no. She destroyed them herself the moment she decided to profit from my trauma. I just made sure there were consequences for that choice. Mental health awareness is important. Supporting people through crisis is valuable, but using someone's darkest moments as raw material for your personal brand? That's not advocacy, it's exploitation, and exploiters should lose everything. So what do you think? Was I too harsh? Or did she get exactly what she deserved? Let me know in the comments.